Good afternoon, dear guests and dear participants of this panel session. Let me welcome you on this session on our session of the stock market and new challenges and opportunities. I would like to wish you welfare and wealth for your families and success to your planning. Let us start. During this panel discussion, we are honored to welcome our speakers, Nurjan Tursunhanov, who is the Director of the Monetary Operations Department, Alina Aldambergen, who is the Chairperson of the Kazakhstan Stock Exchange Board Chairperson, Adil Muhamedjanov. Oh, pardon. Dear Adil, perhaps you are going to be the Deputy Chairman of the Halyk Bank. It was my misspell. Mr. Yertay Salimov, who is the Deputy Chairman of Halyk Bank, and Shulpan Aynabayeva, who is the Chairperson of the Skybridge Invest Board. In the beginning of the 2020, the major challenge for the community was to recover from pandemic. And we thought that the acceleration of inflation processes is something temporary and driven by the economic activity boost from so lengthy lockdowns. However, 2020 is very dynamic year, in fact, and the situation that occurred in February is quite comprehensive, and it slowed down the globalization and strengthened the protectionist interest across the market. And this also resulted in disturbance of the logistics change and accelerated inflation. The very same is applied to the stock markets. And I think we are facing another end of the cycle for the bulls market that we started observing in the end of 2017. We are now facing the end of the decade of cheap money, and current situation resulted in declining of the stock markets. The shares of many companies are depreciated, and the debt crisis is also over there in the horizon, and this results in revisiting of common values. In this current year, investors were observing the situations when shares were depreciated at 100% rate, and this was attributed with additional liabilities imposed on the investors. Our particular stock market was also exposed to various shocks, and this resulted in reduction of capitalization by 13%, also resulted in debt financing performance, which went down to 344 billion Kazakhstani tenge. However, at the same time, the performance in other areas were quite positive. In particular, the combined trading volume for 9 months of 2029 amounted to 123 million tenge, which is 63% higher than the similar performance last year. Despite extensive volatility, the interest of the communities is still high. The amount of retail investors in Kazakhstan is approaching 500,000 individuals, and this is very positive trending, because we are seeing almost doubling of the investors' amount, and the securities market is becoming more and more interesting across the population, and this is driven by simplified access to the stock markets and availability of high technology applications provided by our brokers. And the second part of investors to our assumptions is now entering the market, owing to the major banks entering the market. And while we are introducing IPO, this would be another important contributor to success. Last year, of course, these are not the volumes we would expect to, but we currently have pension assets released to the market. And, We have several factors driving the situation. First of all, this is the opportunity to withdraw pension depositions for housing and health-related reasons. However, the situation is very challenging. It's very difficult to proceed with planning, and this is why we wanted to share the survey outcomes with our audience. So the question is where and what tools are there among the portfolios of the investors, banks, insurance organizations, securities market entities. So these are the major trends that we have observed during the year, and this is something that we would like to share with you today. This is the current structure of the national bank's portfolio. The current structure of institutional investors is quite conservative, though. The major share is taken by the state-owned securities. And as for the currency structure, we haven't faced any significant changes. And 80% of the respondents say that this does not exceed 10% of their portfolio. The next slide demonstrates that 54% of respondents indicate the planning horizon varying from 1 to 3 years. The reduction of the duration of the portfolio is now on the screen, and almost half of financial institutions have action plans in place that will be triggered in case of financial deterioration. At the same time, 46% of financial organizations of our major institutions are not planning to change or revisit their strategies. It is going to be not that much conservative, focusing the internal market. At the same time, 73% are planning to retain the share-based tools within their portfolios. In this particular case, this is the trending, and then there is a question. The share market, is it very right time to start purchasing, acquiring? The third slide, this is how the geography changed, which is quite significant change. 34% of companies have invested their volumes into the stocks by developed countries, while the remaining part is now focused on the developing countries. We can state that as of current, it is more secure to invest in one's own country. The major reasons for duration change would be the reference rate and political uncertainty. And on the next slide, you can see the new investment opportunities are being detected by our investors. Majority of investors believe that index securities for crude commodities are the most valuable, which is perhaps driven by the inflation trends and the crude commodities pricing. Then we have digital assets and real estate foundations. This is how the breakdown looks like, and this is how investors see it, and you can take it as a capture to reflect it in your portfolio or not reflect it in your portfolio. But these are the trends that are driven by geopolitical situation. Just recently, one of the Telegram channels has quoted Barton Biggs and his book on investment strategy, and he said that the quality of analytics by professional investors in the historical performance is higher as that compared to subject matter experts. So, taking this current challenging environment into account, we would like to seek for input from our subject matter experts. What are the perspectives of stock market? What are the opportunities, and what are the drivers that will help us to retain competitiveness? And what is most important, how investors see their long-term strategies, inclusive of that, pursuing not only the gains, but also financial sustainability of the sector as a whole. So this is the introduction. And my first question to Nurjan, perhaps. You are the one who manages the major asset of our country, the National Pension Fund. And the head of the state, in his address to the nation, dated as of September the 1st this year, has raised the issue of the need to re-image the entire pension system, and there were instructions made to come up with a new strategy. And there was an opportunity considered to engage pension assets. So, Nurjan, you are the very right person to ask this question. What are the proposals currently being considered, and what kind of improvement opportunities are there for pension funds management, and how this is going to impact of our private governance institute? Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to congratulate you with the holiday. I would like to thank you for selecting our session, because you did have the right of choice, and we would like to put our best efforts to make the session the most interesting. The main message I am having is liberalization that we are pursuing, acting as the national bank and the agency. We all understand that having single major institutional investor would not get us anywhere. And our experience indicates that this is something that is very difficult to develop, and it's very difficult to have diverse financing tools when we have a single player. And today I would like to share information about the steps towards that liberalization we pursue. The very first slide is actually a reflection of the events we all observed, which is the withdrawal of pension depositions. Perhaps you remember that in February last year there was a decision made, and all of the contributors had an opportunity to withdraw their depositions. 3.5 trillions have been withdrawn from the pension accounts, where almost 90% have targeted housing challenges, and very small share was targeting private management. This slide is a very good demonstration is that it's very difficult to compete with housing problems, and the question of liberalization is quite a challenging one. So we are just continuing our path. 14.1 trillion Tenge is the amount that is accumulated in the Unified Pension Fund. So when we were receiving funds from the private institutions, we used to have 4 trillions. And you can see that the amount is growing. We have 4 governors, and I think we already have the institution of governance. It's not a lot, but we are thinking about the ways to increase the number and increase the amounts. This is a very short overview of the pension fund structure. You can see that almost half is the state securities of the Republic of Kazakhstan. I would like to point that the National Bank is a conservative governor. This slide is there to demonstrate that we have alternatives. We have 4 private governors. They have different and diverse strategies, and for our clients, this is an opportunity to diversify their assets. And what is the most important, as it was mentioned by the previous speaker, we have the instructions issued by the head of the states to improve the efficiency and attract private institutions. And what we think of it, this seizure or withdrawal of pension depositions had some limits. And now we are moving further, and we say that this remaining amount that is left, let us give our clients the opportunities to transfer this amount to private management. We decided that during the initial stage, 50% would be sufficient. And let's say you need to have a threshold of 4 million. Anything beyond 4 million can be withdrawn. And anything beyond 50%, which is 2 million, can be transferred to private management. And we, as the National Bank, we actually protect further liberalization, and we would like to promote liberalization. And we believe that this first step is quite valuable.
The most important factor is the stimulating moments and to give impetus. And there are a number of complications like the state guarantees and warranties. For the managers when you transfer from the public to the private, and there are the issues of the fees and commissions, and now we are working on that. These are all of the market mechanisms, but in addition that our private management administrating companies, they suggested the diversification, and they suggested the strategy and also various advertising, and we're thinking about the measures how to stimulate the people, how can we attract the depositors for them just to transfer, and by declining this ceiling by 50%, and how can we motivate, because there are many inactive assets, and unfortunately, you know, there are the discussions that we are discussing aggressively. We have the working ad hoc group or working group with the Ministry of the Labor and in other public bodies, and we are very open for the dialogue with the market. We would like to learn about your ideas and what impetus we can give just for the depositors to be more active. They transfer from the public to the private one. And also, together with the agency, we think about the opportunity to extend the list of the financial instruments and tools. And in principle, I think that investment strategy is very wide and of a wide range. And we are ready to revise and to liberalize. And very often there is a question raised, where should we invest? Perhaps these instruments, they are to be created by the market, because the national banks, I want to reiterate that these are conservative institutions. This is the sector from white that should create the proposals. On another side, they have to, let's say, create the demand for new tools and instruments. And the most important thing that another point that the private managers or administrators, they can suggest that the diversification of the currencies. We expect that the private managers or administrators, they will wider use a range of their instruments. And despite that we are the largest administrator, and me, myself, first of all, I'm interested for our depositors to transfer to the private administration and management of the assets. Here, I would like to describe in a nutshell the basis of the pension system that we as National Bank adopt. Recently, there was a decision by the National Bank to withdraw all the to translate all the funds into the market. And historically, it appears that the National Bank is the administrator for the public fund of the social insurance and also the insurance of the depositors and the unified pension fund. And do remember this is Baspana agency, and also there are also other subsidiary companies. Just when we launched, there were a very small amount of money, but now they extended. This is a step to the market. We are saying that we need the private investors into the market, and we are working on this issue. And we have the subsidiary companies, and also there are the institutes that owned by the public, by the state, and we are working for these markets to attract the private administrators, and these private administrators on behalf of the public companies like GFGD and other, on behalf of the Ministry of Finance, within the frames of the strategy, they could, let's say, attract these funds. It's already become hotter, and the first funds up to the end under our auspices of our subsidiaries, they will enter the market. And it was highlighted over here in color, like the funds like GFSS and FSMS. So this it is already specified in the laws about the social insurance and social security. It seems to me that the laws that have been drafted by the Minister of Health. It takes some time, of course, but we already started work. In blue color, these are funds that we will see in the market in the nearest months. I just wrapped up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nurjant. In the hall, there is Adil. This is the chair of the State Fund and of Central Depository Securities Fund. Adil, what is your attitude to the initiative of the National Bank, and what is your vision about the strategy to develop the fund with the private? Historically, when we created this fund under the auspices of National Fund, there is not such law where it is specified that National Bank should administer the funds. The National Bank should develop strategies and requirements and require that our assets should be, let's say, invested into the high liquid assets, and they are to be ready in the short time, taking into account for the 3 cases with the withdrawal of licenses. During this time, we have to improve the high level of money stocks. According to the statistics, for the last 1-2 months, the depositors, they take 90-95% of the amounts deposited. Let's say they will, when they have, let's say, the residual 10 or 15,000 tenge, we should have the very high liquid money amount, and our private administrators will be able to develop the securities market. On another side, the portfolio will consist of 2 parts. That will be the liquid portfolio with a long-term horizon for investment, and there will be some kind of super liquid portfolio that could be transferred into the stock money amounts within very short period of time. I think that will be interesting for some companies, and taking into account that as a non-commercial company, we do not allocate the dividends and we are growing. We see that in the banking, making analysis in the banking sector, we expect our assets at the level of the 3 trillion tenge, and on annual basis it will incrementally grow. And we have the high yield and also the deposits by the banks. And I think that the portfolio will increase, and together with the National Bank, within the frames of the strategy, we just splinted some parts, and that will allow us, first of all, to increase the number of the private companies that will just pretend on the administration of our portfolio, that will facilitate the competition, and also directly administering the portfolio. But they will have the private administrators within the frames of the strategies, and who will perform better. I think that it will be very good for the development of the market and competition. We have some peculiarities and features within the frames of the basic principles. We can't keep and invest the assets into the second-tier banks, and that's why we ensure at the beginning level the custodian will be a National Bank. This is the activity that the National Bank is ready to perform. And as for the strategy of the National Bank, the part of the performance will be transferred to the private companies, because as we have various instruments, in addition to the Central Depository Fund, we are ready to invest in the short-term securities and the stocks. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. Thank you. Could I ask you a question? Can you tell both National Bank and regulators and the fund itself, what is your vision, and what private companies will be able to pretend to participate in this process, whether it will be international companies or Kazakhstani domestic companies, whether you will just specify requirements to such administrators, and whether it will be held at the basis of some, let's say, bid or competition, or it will be based on some applications. Let me answer this question. Currently, we are drafting the regulation, and definitely it will be competition, it will be bid, there will be procedures that we will draft together with the National Bank, and this procedure will be open. And I would like to add that every fund, this is a legal entity, they have the administration bodies, either it is the board of directors or management board, and from other side, we will support maximally. And I think that we will support the normative part. This is the right for the selection of the private administrator. And as our subsidiaries, they will perform announce some bids. There will be criteria for the eligibility for the administration of these assets and capital, and all the eligible candidates, nominees, they will be invited. And the starting point when Nur Jamal created the private administrating companies, that will be the starting point. And every fund that they have their own bodies and agencies and structures, and inside they will make decision. Maybe they will increase the level decline their level. Just we will follow up them in that sense. Whether the international companies will be allowed also to participate in this bid, or it will be only domestic Kazakhstani companies, that's a very good question. I think that this is subject for discussion, and I think this question is subject to. So just I gave you an idea for the international companies to participate in this bid. Mike, please. Mike, please. Sorry. It is possible that one of the starting point will be that the administrator that will have the right for the administration of the pension assets, because in this case, actually, we are talking about the quasi-public assets. These are money that have been just accumulated by the banks and central bank. And should we talk about the guarantee fund? And this is a small fund, but it is not also it's rather good because it was mentioned that it has about 1 trillion Tenge assets. At the beginning of the discussion, we have the understanding that perhaps there should be some requirements, but there should be qualifications for the eligibility of the participants of this process. As starting point, we review that should be companies that they are already entitled to administer the pension assets of the citizens. Maybe among these companies we can arrange such bids, or we had discussed with Maria Zhamalovna and also with Nurjan Askarovich, and as a result, a number of these discussions together with the market, we also discussed with the market, maybe because not to have any discrepancies, we will figure out some decision. And currently, frankly speaking, it is too early to talk about it. We just announced the trends that National Bank is using in order to revive the capital market and also the assets management market. And also we heard that you mentioned about the pension assets funds and managements, and also maybe it is polar or not. I just joined this discussion. This is a support for the market and for the National Bank, just starting to transfer these performances and to transfer these assets for the private administration and management. I would just wanted to add the colleagues. Thank you very much. Actually, this discussion confirms the next thesis citation that this is general trend to the decrease or decline of risk. Our large companies, they are not ready to risk, and they would like to have this stable and sustainable new financial instruments, and they want to see their portfolio more liquid and not long-term portfolios in currency. As of today, the volatility index S&P 500 in this so-called Strach index, it was just declined lower than 20%, and this is very high level. And on the 11th of October, it increased up to 30%.
Mr. Sergey, in this current environment, the question would rather be to you as to the investment manager who is familiar with numerous markets. In this current environment, what are the reliable instruments you, as an investment company, see for yourself? Maybe acting as an investment holding, what kind of companies you see, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of investing in highly volatile environment conditions? Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate you with our professional holiday. It's a very interesting panel discussion, so let us discuss. And we have so many answers and so many inputs and opinions, and I have my personal one. Well, in general, in the high volatility timing, there are always numerous questions. Shall I invest or I shall not? But during the highly volatile market, we have so many new investors entering the market because they are driven by the potential gains. So they are quite prompt, and they see the very promising opportunities. Gambling is actually there, attracting people under the very same reasons. Casinos, where you can double your capital, is very attractive for human nature. And this is why so many regulators across the world are trying to regulate this shadow zone and just place it somewhere in the resort area to prevent people from ruining their welfare. Because then the burden on the pension fund is concentrated under the ownership of the citizens. So they keep their savings and the level of their life does not drop when they retire. This is a very important function of regulated financial institutions. This is why the regulators across the world are trying to warn the retail investors. It's always easier with the wholesale investors because they can afford hiring professional governors, professional managers. But for the retail investors, it is very important to have some supervision from the regulator. Just recently, we have kind of amended our legislation on qualified investors, and it was a very timely effort because we were afraid that the regulator will make it so stringent, and this will kind of stop the expected inflows from community because we are now about to start IPO. But luckily, the legislation that was issued was very positive to our opinion, and this particular example, when we started splitting the governors from qualified and individual ones. You see, we don't have so many individual retail investors. We don't need and we don't want to stop them or somehow disencourage them. And this is why we need to kind of warn the investors that these are highly risky opportunities. Once again, we have so many and so diverse investors, and even during volatility timing, investors will be entering the market because there is a very good saying about blood just running through the market, and this is a very good analog. Another important thing is that social, well, you see, we have a social impact. I wonder about you transferring such an important asset to private management as a pension funds. You know, you are planning to transfer pension amounts, and you have direct resolution guiding what can be done with this amount, what can be not done. So, and if everything is prescribed, it is okay. maybe some proportions can vary, but they will be still within the same range because the maximum threshold will be predefined. Let's take the example of some international institutions. Let's take the major one, the Japan pension fund, that owns 100 billion US dollars assets. Everyone is suffering now, right? No one is gaining crucial profits, right? So they only gain 3%, which is, not that much. But we have to consider that this is a foreign exchange currency. But last year, the Japan pension fund earned 25%. Taking into account they have 100 billion US dollars asset. And the structure of the fund's investments, Japan fund, you understand what I mean, right? This is a very wealthy nation. They can invest 50% into the shares. And the real structure of investment is 25% into local shares and 25% to foreign shares. I'm not urging you to follow this path, never. The community, the population shall stand ready to absorb. Institutions shall stand ready to absorb and develop. But my point is that the market is different, and there are different examples of success. So other countries are ready to give these amounts to local funds, to international funds, and apparently the inflow of such huge amounts, 1.6 trillion, then 2 trillions just in a row. Just can you imagine if all of this money will come to the regulated platforms? We are going to face the liquidity boost, and liquidity boost will then incentivize the competitiveness. Competitiveness will entail investors. So it is all coming together, and eventually we will feel all of the advantages, and this will also be supported by the national IPOs that have already been launched, and we are seeing that people are interested in IPOs, and let's hope that our first experience is successful, and we will put our best efforts and resources to then replicate IPOs and scale them up. But we expect that our market will have a very good establishment path towards the development, not stagnation. Answering your question, what kind of assets? We talked about crypto, we talked about other types, but during this current paradigm, we are seeing interesting opportunities for investments in state bonds. However, the revenues rate that are currently observed across the market are not that much attractive, so state bonds can be considered. Our company is not admitted and is not doing the pension funds management. Before this panel session, I checked the pension funds website, and you can also browse what they invest into. I think if I had an opportunity, I would invest into the cash market, taking into account the national bank's rates, 16% funding rate. Just stay there. Just buy state securities and stay there. Today, the national bank's director said that it may be the case that the reference rate will go up. If we will be having such rates, why do we need to do business? You don't need to do anything, and you will end up having 16-17%. It's okay. It's like just very, very rigid 16-17%. It's not something that I urge you to close everything. Why jobs? Why regulatory performance? Why regulatory supervision? Just have bonds. This is all. This is sufficient. But on the other hand, this is quite reliable investments in this highly volatile environment, and they keep raising the rate. So I think it's more about lack of understanding what is going to happen. Well, in this particular case, we are going to have liquidity. If you need money, please, here you go. You can have your money back. And on the other hand, it supports the monetary, the cash markets that are there across the stock platforms, and it is a very reliable income. Maybe it's some trolling I'm using now, but anyways. I had a question about shares, but after your answer, I don't have any questions anymore. What to do? Well, you see, everyone is investing in shares with more than 50%. I think that, well, everyone have their own perception of risks, right? Someone is currently with the bonds, and they think, why not shares? Another person thinks like, why shares? I need to go for bonds. So it depends what is your starting current point. There is no universal tool. You cannot approach the doctor saying, just give me the one. So the very notorious funk, I think they have rebranded. Some people, they went downgrading, right? Amazon. Another example, Netflix, is also demonstrating some positive trend on the other hand. So it all depends. It is important to have good experience and good analysts. Why it is always favorable to have domestic market? Well, everyone knows KMG, right? Gas. Why everyone is so much interested in KMG's IPO? Because every single day we engage with this company. We understand what it is. It's, explaining about KMG to Russia is quite difficult. They don't know who KMG is, and as compared to our knowledge. So this is why it is always easier for domestic market. So when we have Netflix or Amazon opportunities, what do we know about them? Subscriptions. This is all. But we need to understand what kind of policy they pursue, what kind of investment arrangements they have. So the very same can be applied to our community and to pension money. So when we invest, this is going to be responsible investing, right? And we cannot afford, in this current environment, in the environment of the hearing state, we cannot afford being not responsible. This is why we think that in this particular point of time, local shares, local bonds, local assets would work, especially when we talk about such an asset as pension amounts. And as for the shares, we just need to be very selective with the portfolio. As for the responsible investments, I would like to have one comment that was not there in among the speakers. Well, even though we have liberal approach, we still have liability for nominal revenue by the managing company, right? Yes, I have it in my notes, by the way, that it might be the case that we will buy today and end up in prison tomorrow. So we need to understand what liability and responsibility is. What can we use pension amounts for? Because you may buy these assets or these securities today and end up death sentence tomorrow. So this will bring us to the situation when every single institution will buy the very same assets with no diversity in it. So this is very sensitive, Maybe we need to change the approaches to the estimation of the nominal income, nominal revenue. Last year, we have introduced amendments to the legislation providing for second-tier banks entering the market. And very few banks have leveraged this opportunity in the very beginning. And we were in doubt. So was it the right thing to do? But now we are seeing that the banks are entering the stock market one by one in a row. And as of today, we have a very major bank, the Bank of Kazakhstan. And I think we didn't have any advertisement. They have so many clients in Bank. Yirtai, the question to you, what are your plans? How are you going to cope? Thank you very much, because you are carrying such a great burden working with retail section. Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity and congratulate you with the National Currency Day. That initiative that was introduced by the regulating body was very welcomed by us. And we were one of the first banks who entered this story. And within our Halyk Home Bank application, one investor, private investor, mass segment, can easily open an account within 15 minutes and purchase quite a significant amount of securities and notes available at KZ and C++. Pardon. And these major changes from KZ, from central depository, when we were allowed to open these accounts, this was a very interesting opportunity, and it was comfortable, it was convenient for our clients, it was convenient for us from the accounts administration perspective, and this enabled us, and it was very right a statement by yours, it enabled us to actively open accounts for our clients, for individuals.
And individuals. And currently we opened already about 220,000 accounts for individuals. And within the frames of IPO, currently we see the high activity of our clients. Just for the last 2-3 days. Oh, sorry. When this history started, about 2,000-3,000 applications already received, and we are developing very intensely. And of course, our bank is represented in all regions, and relevantly for us, it is easier to advertise and namely position just our clients, our customers to acquire or to participate in this APO. You said you were right that this is the perspective market, and we are moving in that direction. That we would like to change, let's say, the way of thinking of our citizens, just to leave the deposit market and to transfer to the fund market. And this is a very big objective and mission to provide with, to improve the knowledge of our customers. And we pay great attention, especially now, currently, we will get the very features in our application, just improving the financial literacy. And in our application in Halyk Invest, the customers, they can, let's say, upload and to read very simple things about the fund market, about the exchange market, and to modify, and they can modify, and they can test it themselves, and they will understand. So what is the difference of one stock or security versus another one? And I think that we are in a proper way, and we have to our mass segment, our customers, we have to translate them and transfer them the things, the points, and for them to improve for their literacy, financial literacy. And we understand that we are working on other also things, and I think that in the nearest future we will have very interesting points and things in our applications. And we are working much on this issue, and we are the single bank that we became the QR agents. We initiated the agreement with the Federal Tax Agency of the United States, and from the next year we will allow our customers, and we will give them the opportunity to trade with the American emittents, and we will provide them opportunity from the viewpoint of the easing and improving the taxation for our customers. That was the great job that have been performed, and I think that some additional activities have been implemented for our customers. Thank you very much indeed. Here I would like to ask a question to Alina Utimisovna and to Adil Nurlanovich. How our market and our infrastructure is prepared to such inflow of such customers? What kind of innovations we can expect in the nearest future? Because, for example, like omnibus accounts, that opportunity for the customers to trade at the stock exchange, and also IPO. And these are very new and clear things that have been performed within the very short period of time, and that they have been probated. But we have to move ahead and further on. What are your objectives and goals? Can you tell? Good afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for your question. As for the retail market, I would like to say that this year we observe the activities in Halinka Bank and the Center Credit Bank, and last year we just forecasted about the retail, and Adil maybe explains in detail. 345,000 people, customers they have. They invest into the infrastructure locally and international. Just looking at this trend, we can see that the growth within 1 year, 10 months, the growth was by 65,000 times, and taking into account the electronic digitization, and we understand that digitization, these are outbreaking technology that allow to solve such issues like counting of the assets and custodian business, and also why we decided to use, because if you have application, of course you provide more services through this application. At the Kazakhstani Stock Exchange, we had very interesting numbers. I would like to sound the results. And it is we developed 4 scenarios of the growth of retail market in Kazakhstan, and also the growth of the retail market in other countries with the digitization, with the extension of the range of the service by banks and brokers. We have 510,000 with aggressive forecast, and 304,000 with the conservative. We are following the progressive forecast. In 2025, we will have a million accounts, and taking into account the economic conditions, inflation, and the welfare level. As for the conservative, 1.8 million by 28. And we will look how the infrastructure works, and we intensely implemented the omnibus accounts, and also we discussed also with you, Maria Japarovna, because the exchange market, they work with the brokers through the omnibus accounts, because when the accounts will be opened together with the banks, there will be great a number of them. Let's say the Halik Bank while was training, and during that period, within several months, they opened already 230,000 accounts. If you have application, even you will be able to buy one stock or security. There is just a little bit different system in the partnership with the banks. We have target not 1,000 or 2,000 USD, but even just 1,000 Tenge. Of course, at the stock exchange, we use all the efforts to service all these accounts, especially when they will not be serviced through the omnibus, but they will be serviced in the just common exchange market, which is non-standard ones. Just in the system, they service the omnibus accounts that we have decades of the accounts. But now we have over 474,000 accounts. These are very short numbers. And let's see what we will have in 2025. Let's say 24 million accounts maybe we'll have in 2020. Ideal central depository will be able to cope with this objective? In a nutshell, yes, we will be able. Thank you very much, Maria Jamalova, with your question. I would like to congratulate all the attendees with the holiday, and would like to wish the financial welfare. And we prepared some statistics over here in order to demonstrate with what challenges the central depository faced with and the market as a whole. And the most important thing that I would like to note that this year the stock exchange market can be highlighted with a crucial growth of the number of accounts in the system of the face value accounting in the central depository. And you see the numbers as of the 14th of November. The number is 494,317,000 accounts. It increased by two-folds. And I would like to highlight the points that of this amount, 4,943,17 accounts they have been segregated. That they have the individuals they have 491,000. It appears actually this 99% and less than 1%. These are legal entities, and that I would like to say that non-residents in this number is only 2,700. This is 20% of the total amount of the number. And the growth rate, we didn't expect such a pace of the growth. And the highest growth was in February, just about 70,000 accounts have been opened during 1 month, just for the period up to the 14th of November, 17,000 accounts have been opened. And I would like also to share with the point about the profile investors. We see that investor in Kazakhstan, the profile is becoming younger, and the age of the investors is that opening accounts up to 35 years old, and this number increased by 2 times or 3 times. And the age from 17 up to 24 years old were 19% of the whole statistics, and the group of the investors from 25 up to 34 is 19%. And 30%, and the highest number of this is the age from 35 years old up to 55 years old, and the number of these customers is 35%. But we observe now the cutting short and curtailing, and now the share of the retail investors are also curtailing just in the age of older than 55 years old, and this curtailing was from 25 up to 14%. And I would like to note that we still keep the gender equality, and the female investors up to 44%. And males are 56%. As for the regional ones, the main location of the investors, these are Almaty and Astana, these 19 and 11% of their share relevantly. And it's interesting that Turkestan region is at the 3rd place, and they grow only by 3 times, and the lowest statistics there is in the North Kazakhstan region. This is we have over there of about 1.5% of the investors. And also you noted about the omnibus accounts, and I would like to remind that from July of the 1st last year, the brokers were able to open the omnibus accounts for the aggregated accounting of the assets of the customers, and the first accounts have been slowly opened in December last year, and as of November 14th, this number is 273,000 accounts. You know who opens mainly these accounts in the omnibus system. And also, I would like to say that we continue to expect that aggressive growth. We didn't expect it, but despite the challenge that Central Depository faced with this load, with this burden, and we continue to cope with, and we now work internally. We work hard with regard to the automatization, computerization of the internal processes, extension of the loading opportunities. And the last year we accepted the digitization strategy that allows us to roll out under such conditions and to make decisions. Of course, everything depends on whether we will be supported by the market, by the banks, by broker agencies. This is very hot period, and that we have to pay attention to some issues. And by continuing this statistics regarding the loads and burden, I would like to highlight about that in addition to the opening accounts, what was the inflow of the foreign securities happened during this period. From the beginning of the year, we over 1.5 times, to be exact, 1.7 times. So we increased the quantity of the securities to be serviced, and the highest share is for the securities for the U.S. securities, about 96% from Russia, and also the Russian securities, and also should we consider the structure, then actually 47%, almost the half of them, these are international bonds, and and 42% these are the assets, and the residual amount, the 10%, these are increment for the investment funds.
In other words, such a burden is there, and it make our information systems requirements became more stringent to process such a flow of securities. The major holders are apparently the repatriation of our assets of our Kazakhstani investors who have transferred their securities from international depositories, from international broker organizations back to Kazakhstan. And as of November 14th, as of the end of October, the amount of foreign securities is indicative, but it is something around $11 million. Perhaps, yes, I would like to share those volumes, that wave that we had to face as a central depository. And this is something that forces us to reinforce our automation efforts. Adil, regarding the recent statistics on Russian notes and securities, Russian government has introduced limitations and restrictions for foreign investors, and some of these securities of Kazakhstan residents have ended up being blocked due to various reasons. And this was not sanctionless. This was overall policy. And the National Bank and the agency and the Central Depository have intervened quite extensively. I would like to bring this discussion on the table. Yes, this is a very sensitive and very important issue for our investors, indeed. Some certain, not certain, but let me put it this way. Being more accurate, these assets are not blocked. These are assets that are currently at the account of the Central Depository of the Russian depository system, and they are not blocked, but all of the residents of the depository have received S status for their accounts, which means limited movement. It means the securities can enter the account, but they cannot exit. So as of October the 1st, we currently have something around 57 shares and I think 30 bonds of 51 emitters, totaling to very estimated amount, something around 30 billion rubles. So, jointly with the agency and the National Bank, we have intervened and we have engaged with our Russian peers. And in August this year, the Moscow Stock Exchange has announced that Kazakhstan investors can gain the opportunity to access Russian markets to sell, to market this securities and notes, because the accounts are currently there in Russian Federation depository. By the way, almost 90% of these securities are bonds, and almost half of them would be notes by the Ministry of Finance issued in rubles in accordance with Russian Federation legislation. And that particular initiative that was initiated by our country, resulting from negotiations that we will have an opportunity to market these notes at the Russian market. We have negotiated with the Russian depository and we have received clarifications. It's a very simple facility, by the way. Any investor who owns the securities, Russian origin securities in Russian depository system has to open an investment account at one of the Russian brokers that has a depository system, and then transfer this amounts from our depository chain to the Russian broker chain. And after confirmation, without change of the owner, they can sell these notes at the Russian market. And to confirm the validity of such facility, we have received several decrees or orders that are currently being processed, and we are seeing it is a well-performing facility, and I hope that this is one of the options to address the situation, somehow market these assets that have been issued in accordance with Russian legislation. So in the future, keep your money in central depository and keep your notes in central depository as well. We are not limited in terms of timing, in fact, because the session is in the second half of the Congress, so the facilitators allowed us to converse a little bit more about the stock market. But I would like to go back to the most crucial issue, KMG's IPO. We have been waiting for this event, major event, milestone event for a while, very central for the entire stock market of Kazakhstan, inclusive of both platforms like IFC and Kazakhstani platform. Reception of application has started on November 9th. It is expected the market will be provided with a rate of 5%. Shulpan, you are the very direct member and actor of this process. Maybe you can share some insider details? I would like to thank all of the speakers today. Everyone has provided their input. Adil, thank you. Because owing to your negotiations that you have referred to, we managed to come up with a definition of the investor from friendly country. And we all relate to this definition. And this helped us to push the process and somehow manage these frozen assets. I would like to also take this opportunity and thank all of the participants with the national holidays and our occupational holiday. I name it National Currency Day. And I would like to wish everyone welfare, prosperity, and since we are not limited with lunch time and we can keep 4 hours, this would be another good thing to thank for. Thank you for this question. In fact, For those who are inside of the process, this is another very important issue. I have peers of mine from consortium, and I also have some colleagues here on the scene in the panel. But you know, the colleagues who work on this are here. Rahat, Alibek, they're all here today. And indeed, we work in close cooperation for many years, preparing this very flagship transaction. We have completed a very extensive effort, and I truly believe that this IPO has a very great capacity that will provide an impetus to the market. We talk about impetuses all day, right? And, you know, earlier when we used to have not only the national bank managing the pension assets, we had the entire system. Just recall what an interesting system we had. We are going back to our memories with a very, very sadly feelings. We are seeing a lot of initiatives to revive the market. And this, going back to the IPO idea, would be another attempt by the market that the government responded to, and it is there to revive the market. We have so many questions about free float that is recognized as that insignificant, saying that this 5% would be not that much contributional to the market. But look, KMG is the flagship company of Kazakhstani economy. And going back to the terms, this is large cap, right? And when we talk about 5% free float and all of the corporate governance thing, this is not the major package. But if we look from the perspective of the absolute values that is going to be placed across the retail sector, I think this would be a very great impetus. We are expecting to have huge amount of retail investors, individuals, but at the same time, the gates remain open for institutional and international investors. So this balanced approach has very great capacity to boost the market development, because retail can bring some push to the trading exercise. But at the same time, availability of anchor investors, institutional investors, will enable more liquid process. And very great impact is provided by pricing, right? We have so many discussions about fair pricing or unfair pricing. So I think that we are in the professional environment, right? And we all shall treat the estimation of the price from the professional perspective. We shall all understand when an investor invests into the share, he or she selects the growth background, growth history, and they are definitely checking what kind of performance and what kind of capacity this share has. It's not the right thing to compare it to dividends. It's a very simple, very primitive, very simple approach to define and to determine whether the price is accepted. Because investments into the share, when we invest in shares, the dividend is just an additional bonus. It's just the cherry on the top of the pie. It is something that complements the investing attractiveness as compared to the performance that is already incorporated into the pricing. So the current pricing that is determined by the government for this particular IPO, KMG IPO's transaction, to our opinion, to the opinion of the consortium of consultants and analysts, is interesting. From the first glance, we can say that this is 0.6% from the balancing cost and 0.6 from the balancing cost, or 65-70% from the fair pricing. The reason for that is that the current balancing cost is 14,000. The fair price, according to majority of estimation and valuations of local and international banks, is something around 11.5 and 12,000 tenge, and current pricing of 8,400 is a very good upside for further growth. So I think this IPO shall be that interesting and successful, and taking into account all of the efforts currently being undertaken to attract as many investors as possible to this particular transaction. We have implemented awareness campaign, NDR campaign, roadshow campaign. We had all of our 4 consultants traveling across the country jointly with Samruk and KMG, and they have prepared the investor base. And as of current, during this particular timing, we have the roadshow that relates to the transaction, Zero Roadshow. Just yesterday, KASE hosted the meeting with institutional investors. And yesterday, we had another meeting, the first meeting with retail investors in Almaty. At the same time, the very same meetings are arranged across Kazakhstan. These are meetings with retail investors to expand the coverage to the maximum. Such work that is very widely broadcasted, promoted, is actually something unprecedented. I work at Kazakhstani capital market for many years, and I would name it unprecedented. Taking into account the depth, the coverage. However, we still see some criticism saying that there is no information available. But I am informing you. I am making this information available to you. Information is there we didn't have it till some point of time according to the game rules. But now the roadshow is there. Information is supplied daily.
It is absolutely open dialogue, between both the emittent and also the stock exchange as selling auctioneer and shareholder, and also with the attraction of the Kazakhstani consultants. This is Halik Finance, Freedom Finance, BCC Invest, and Establish Investor, that they just allocated their reports with the assessments. These are resources of information that we can get the very useful information in order to make the investment decision. Thank you, Shulpan. I would like to add, also, the Shulpan mentioned absolutely properly that starting from the November 14th, when Ideal Roadshow was launched, and with our group, our Halik group, Halik Finance, and Bank, that was very massive marketing history. And now you can see actually, let's say, at the TV broadcasting, at the messengers, we were expecting when we get the parameters, and now currently we see the result that Shulpan mentioned. And we hope that all these emittents that are listed in the public privatization program, they will also they will be active as KMG. And I would like to ask the question related to the digital currencies. What do you think? Do you think that digital currency should be in the portfolio of our investors? Whether the various cryptocurrencies they have future. it seems to me that everything, it's up to you. If you allow us, so therefore you will have such cryptocurrencies, and you do not allow now so far. But a very interesting thing that first of all, the market should suggest or propose to the regulator, and therefore the regulator will assess. And we would like to suggest you to start with the digital currencies. Actually, colleagues, we as stock exchange, we consider two aspects. All the cryptocurrencies are traded at the stock exchange. The second point is we regulate. The second issue, whether the regulator will allow us. Actually, we have the cryptocurrencies in Kazakhstan because we created already a regulatory framework. We have the regulatory, let's say, leverages, and we follow up. And I would like to say that we see that in the stock exchange industry, we follow how this blockchain technologies, how it is developed, how the stock exchange they starting to trade with the digital instruments and cryptocurrencies. It is clear that this crypto market is already developed. Recently, our KZ just made an analysis that we have there are already 500 trading platforms, and the 6 of them they are traded at centralized platforms. Actually, that blockchain will substitute this trading system, but actually it is not true because it will be decreased because there is the applications and there is continuous implementation of these applications, and of course there are the let's say disadvantages when you are trading at the blockchain. But the settlement is with the notes is at the blockchain, but gradually stock exchange is transferring to the digital instruments. It could be the futures, there could be the futures for the cryptocurrencies. We know that the Chicago Stock Exchange, they already allowed to trade with the cryptocurrencies and also trading of notes in the digital format. That's why we are making a research inside the stock exchange, inside the KZ, and how can we analyze and how can we translate to the new technologies, how can we develop infrastructure with the new technologies, and how can we transfer to the digital instruments and tools, and also we can consider more aggressive way that what happens at the world. Yes, we all know that we can we transfer to the retail, but retail they already trade with these cryptocurrencies, and relevantly it is not that it is evident, and we see the institutional investors in the foreign countries, they have the exposure to the cryptocurrency. They do have already such risk analysis in their portfolios. Yes, this is a very aggressive instrument, but gradually they are already starting to acquire. Of course, maybe cryptocurrency. We understand that cryptocurrency is not an instrument, but it's already appeared as an instrument. In some countries, it is used as the goods or financial instrument. We have to analyze what should we do with these crypto instruments. In some countries, they already trade with their own cryptocurrencies, not digital, but namely cryptocurrencies, for example. And or we can transfer some instruments to the digital instrument. So in the nearest future, just we'll suggest to consider to review by the regulator and the official to understand how to make the settlements between fiat and cryptocurrencies in order to understand what additional instrument we have to create for the investments at the Kazakhstani market. Adil, and whether the central depository is prepared to suggest such services for blockchain. In a nutshell, yes, we are always ready. But really, it is a very important issue, and we have to analyze it, and we can see these trends worldwide, and we see the initiatives of our national bank, how they piloted this digital Tenge. Actually, the central depository, they're trying to follow within the frames of our digitizing strategy. We are preparing the piloting project, and by using of these crypto instruments, and we consider the option of the tokenization of the instrument as the first crypto instrument, and we will see. We consider from 2 points the opportunity for the acceptance for the servicing some of the crypto instruments as a digital asset, and how to tokenize it. And the second story is how to use the technology itself inside the central depository, namely for the accounting of this instrument. These are the 2 big sections of the possible development of the central depository. If the first instrument will allow just simply account and these instruments themselves, who has the digital form, for that purpose we need some regulatory frames. And the second trend of using this technology inside the central depository of the whole capacity, this can result in the change of the industry. At some moment it could appear that the infrastructure that exists currently, it can be changed when the technology in the listing, they can, let's say, substitute the central depository or stock exchange. This is the future, but the technology says that proves that it is possible to do. But we have to use the proper regulatory frames and properly use the technologies. It seems to me that the bank, the regulatory bank, should consider how to use properly the capacity which is based in the technology itself. We have to discuss it in detail with and scrutinize with the market, just as it happened before with the adjacent industries and the sectors. And Sergey, what about the retail investors? Do you have the digital assets? Yes, of course, there are. We should agree that this instrument already happened, whether we want to just or not, whether we regulate or not, whether it exists in the portfolio of the professional market makers or not. But most of the retail most of the market makers, they always use the assets like bitcoins or cryptocurrencies, but it happened. So we can left behind, or because one can say that some American stock exchange, but they already initiated, and you have to just call for the police and in order to stop the trading with bitcoins. But we can provide with the alternative. We can be a leader of this movement, or we can use some regulations that in order to avoid the consequences. We see the demand for the instruments of the short-term market, and we can allow to trade in a very short time. Already for decades there are the futures for the weather, and this is a very demanded instrument. What is the problem to, let's say, to launch futures for the for bitcoins under the paradigm conditions, and we can also develop the instrument for the short-term market. And I think that there will be many professional market makers in the retail market that will transfer and then will trade. You wanted to see it to be happened in the stock exchange market, and I think that you will have such customers that will hedge the risks. It is not such. It will be easy to implement. This is futures, and everything is solved now. And there's the futures index. It could work also, and we can see the flow of the institutionals in the retail market. Should we do it in proper time, namely currently, when there is a great outflow from of these pseudo markets, or let's say some non-regulated industries or crypto industries. And as I see, I read the articles that there is the outflows of the instruments for the so-called cold market purses and wallets, and I think that it could be in demand. I think that the digital currency. I missed the presentation of the digital Tenge. I heard the citation that we do not compete with the banks. We do not handicap when all the assets will transfer to the digital. It seems to me that second-tier banks, they feel uncomfortable when they hear that the first-tier bank will directly deal with the citizens. But there is nothing so crucial in the world. I've heard that somewhere in Nigeria they do have some kind of market. I don't want to invest in Nigeria. I'm very reluctant. Maybe it makes sense to invest into the crocodiles or some diamonds. I don't know how it happened over here, just in our country. There was no sense. I had discussions with the short-term investors with not retail, but very qualified and eligible just customers. And when someone raised the issue about the digital Tenge or analog issues, they ask the question, what is the difference? For example, I do have the assets in my client. It is non-cash. What is the difference between the digital and between the non-cash? And what is there is no difference. And I see that they do not understand what is the difference. Yes, they do understand. Yes, they do understand that there will be no intermediate second-tier bank. But let's remind the history of the digital assets. One of the important postulates, so-called decentralization. It is not the decentralization. This is, let's say, when they are avoiding the transparency of the idea. They want to hide from the regulator just the procedures of the, let's say, history of this cryptocurrency. One of the postulates that I don't want to be regulated. I want to do whatever I want. But this is one of the most crucially important things. And relevantly, there are the advantages and also there are disadvantages. Of course, they want to, let's say, to work in this zone and have non-regulated zone just and for to become that they will be, let's say, they will be made by supply to provide the claim to the regulator. And of course,
may I also comment the digital assets will be made available in Halyk application, or they will be only made available to Halyk Invest qualified investors? Well, this is quite a provoking question, tricky one, Well, so far, within the functions of our applications, we are not putting the agenda of crypto so far, because it was very right a statement in the beginning. Let us first sort out what we were allowed to do by the regulator. Definitely, we have reviewed for many opportunities. NavaX, for instance, Binance entered this agenda. But but so far we are to report to the regulator, and we are not in the position to consider for this. Maybe Halyk Finance, Farhad, do you want to comment? Well, anyways, from the point of segmentation of our clients, we are in different positions. As I have already mentioned, our major audience would be mass segment. We want to train our clients, unqualified clients, not to be afraid of the stock market, so they can review and they can perceive the stock market as an alternative. Well, traditionally, stock investors can keep talking and keep saying, "What is this? This is something that that is not worth our attention." But in recent years, we have changed such perception. We must accept the thing is there, the thing is functional, and in this particular market trending, it is more interesting as compared to stock market instruments. So by accepting such trend, we have to adapt, and we have to perceive it as something integral to our current environment. So I urge you to turn your faces to these new trends. Talking about the alternative platforms, alternative to our classical regulations, we have Astana Exchange. We are establishing the structure that will be doing the studies related to such opportunities across the crypto market. So we are already working on this. To me, to those, as I call as a classic stock investors, to me it looks difficult. To me, it is difficult to understand. When the entire thing has just started, I graduated crypto study. And I asked them about pricing, because across the stock market, the pricing is very simple, with fundamental factors in the very bottom, and then the fundamental cost is overlaid with the market factors. With cryptocurrency, they don't have fundamentals, and it's not fair, to my opinion. But we can keep talking about this. But the thing is there. The market is there. The investors are there. And this is why we need to see it. We need to recognize it. We need to create the rules for cryptocurrency usage as the payment instrument. Anyways, we are moving towards this direction. And as the first step, I would definitely support Sergey that we can create some derived instruments for cryptocurrency. And within the scope of our current routine environment, we can start utilizing those. I know that we have ETFs, for instance, futures that Sergey was referring to, and this can be, very, very good and fresh input to the market. Nurjan, how about 1% of the pension assets being allocated for cryptocurrency, invested? Well, another tricky question, even more tricky. I am a conservative investor, and it's difficult for me to judge. Shulpan, it was a very good statement of yours that the instrument that doesn't have any fundamental, to me, and especially now when cryptocurrencies are going through various collapses and some downtimes, I would like to say that at this particular point of time, we haven't even conversed about this. You've mentioned that you were doing something in this area. Well, we would like to learn your experience. Thank you very much. Closing this session, I would like to thank all of the participants for sharing their input. In this difficult time, everyone is currently concerned where to invest, especially when we talk about individual investors, and experience of our neighbors is always interesting. So those new opportunities we have referred to today, I think they will bring the value and have some value from the practical perspective. Maybe it is something worth learning, and definitely this conversation will continue, and we will try to provide more opportunities to the investors, not only those here in the room, but those watching us online. Thank you very much for your participation, for your patience. We have talked for 2 hours. Good luck, everyone. Congratulations with the holiday. Take care. Stay healthy.